Next presentation is actually on the Rustic Buff and Old Gothic Railroad, my ON30 railroad, and I'm going to demonstrate building scratch building a work caboose. But this was a work caboose that I made back in 2019, and I have featured it before, but this is a little more comprehensive. It's a total scratch build, more or less, and I hope you enjoy it. That is a sepia photo of the finished working caboose. I'm going to show you how I made it, and we'll just start. I started with a Bachmann freight car underframe. These frames are available in black plastic or in oxide red. They're actually sold without couplers or trucks, and they are discontinued. But a quick check online with model railroad suppliers and on eBay shows that they're readily available. I've seen them as low as $19 for a package, I think, of 3, as much as 30, but they're still around. It just gives you a jump start on a scratch build. So the first step I did was basically to box the outside with a basswood, a 2x8 basswood. So I wood grained it, and then I stained it, and then I super glued it onto the perimeter of the frame. That's the nice. There we go. Okay. So next I added the decking, and I took 2x6 material basswood using a scribing material. I scribed the wood. You can see the wood grain there, and I had it slightly overhang the each side of the frame off the edges. And I used 3 or 4 different colors, these hunter line stains, so that I would have some randomness to the decking. I sometimes mix my own washes, but for this, I use pre-mixed products, the hunter line. So using a square, because I didn't want run out, I glued them on one at a time. Since I'm gluing wood to plastic, I used cyanoacrylate. Next, I moved on to moving the cabin portion of the car. There was a little bit of flex in this frame. In fact, it was warped. So I went to the trouble of putting in 1/8 inch aircraft grade plywood for the center of the car to take that flex out. So basically, I put super glue on the structure below and pressed this 1/8 inch flooring onto the frame, take that bow out of this model. And then it was like building a structure. I used Grandt Line windows. I just used a square and make sure everything was parallel and perpendicular. I used more of the stain. This is just a commercial siding from Mount Albert. It's like just a board type siding. Everything again was glued with cyanoacrylate. This really follows how I build structures. This is 1/4 inch material. This is extremely fragile up here. There's not much material. So I put a piece of plywood behind this. 1/8 inch or 1/16 inch plywood. I was afraid if you picked it up later, it would snap. And I couldn't really put that 1/4 inch material here because there wasn't sufficient height. So I want them to be durable. Unlike a structure which is static, people pick up cars, rolling stock. and I wanted to have a little bit of strength to it. To get the height of it, I took a Bachmann car and measured the height at approximately 18 feet high. Doesn't sound right. Um, on the interior, like on my structures, I painted it with flat black because I wasn't going to detail the inside. So if you looked in, I didn't want you to see anything. I credit Jason Jensen of Jason Jensen Trains for making me switch to the craft paints. And the craft flat black is the flattest of flat paints. The Grandt Line windows and doors were all cyanoacrylated in place. At this stage, they're just painted some military Tamiya green that I frequently use. They haven't been weathered. Next up, the windows, or the roof, excuse me. So I took a roof from a Bachmann Caboose, and I scraped off all these details. I removed these these walking boards on the roof. I removed all the detail, just like with a chisel blade. And then I made a razor saw cut because I needed to shorten the the length of this roof. I could have used 040 styrene, but I had this roof in my parts bin and I thought I'd just use it. I did have to extend it a little bit. So I did use 040 filler material on the end here, and using plastic solvent, it just, as they say, welded this two styrenes together. I didn't really have to worry about filling it because I'm putting this roofing paper on it. It was an 18-foot offset cupola caboose, not the height. Yeah, okay. This was the most tedious portion of the build, was putting in these little wooden pieces to hold the roof block. If I had to do this again, I would make them out of styrene. But I got away with it. I super glued them in place. This paper, incidentally, this roofing is an old Paper Creek product. I have a master. They're no longer in business. I simply put it on my printer, hit copy color, and it gives me basically an infinite supply. Again, they're no longer available. Next, the end railings. I made these out of brass. They could have been made out of styrene. They could have been made out of wood, but then they would be very fragile. And as I say, rolling stock is handled, picked up. So I made a jig out of balsa wood, um, and I cut these pieces on my little table saw. And then I sanded them with my disc sander. And then I put flux on there and just soldered them up. And with a file, I filed this excess solder away. You can't even see the solder anymore. And then I sprayed it black with a flat black. Now I've got a very stout railing system. So I primed them because they're metal. I primed them with a rattle can of gray, and then I airbrushed them. I didn't actually airbrush them. I used rattle can charcoal black. There's the railing in place, and I've rusted it with various colors, acrylic paints and things, and I've weathered this door. Probably went a little overboard on this window. Might have to pop that out and put a new one in. But you can see it's very rustic. The wood graining and the rust, it's very strong. And there's a side view. This is a Grandt Line plastic styrene piece. These are Grandt Line windows. I painted them green to match the doors, and then I wanted the framing to be a different color. This is also a Grandt Line detail. These are all add-ons. These are 2x4s up there. There's the right-hand side view. I have ladders on either side. I think I went back and put some boards here so they could walk across. I have to see. There's all the decking in place. See the randomness and the colors and the wood graining. The wood graining is crucial if you want a nice realistic look. Otherwise, it's just smooth sanded board, which would be non-prototypical. I wanted to illustrate that there was a little rust going on from this quote metal roof. So I put a little rusting here. Now over this portion here, I wanted to have some sort of canopy, and I wanted a structure to hold this canvas canopy. So again, I turned to uh, this brass material. It's solid brass, and I cut it and sanded it to fit, made a little jig. And as before, I just sanded it, fluxed it, soldered off, or sanded or filed off the solder. And it's a very strong little piece when you're all done. So there's the solder just put on there. It's just sanded flush. It takes no time at all with a file to remove that excess solder. Well, there's the frame painted much like the end frame, and then these are commercial castings that I placed onto it is a uh, working caboose, so I wanted work benches on there. I painted this up. These are cast metal. I'm not sure who I got them from. I needed a support for the end here, and I wanted a wind block. So I made a bookcase, is what it looks like. Then I put a trash can here. Excuse me. Now the problem with using this metal pewter casting is it was so heavy that the car um, listed to the left or listed to a side. So I put this trash can in here and I filled it with tungsten weights from Pinewood Derby cars. And that did two things. I put a sufficient number of these round discs in there so that now it was a balanced car, no longer listed from left to right. And it added a nice mass to the car so it tracks better. I needed to come up with some sort of uh, canopy material. I went to Hobby Lobby and I found just like a shopping, like a woman's, I don't know what it is, but it was cheap. It was like $3. It had this nice coarse material. So I cut a little swatch of it, rolled it up, saturated it with super glue. It's like rock solid now. And then I stained it with alcohol washes. The theory is when it rains, this unrolls and covers up the workbench. It looks believable. This is the underside of the work caboose. This is the Bachmann carriage. I just hit all the details that they had on there with rust materials. I purchased some Bachmann trucks, screwed them in place. I mean, if you don't have the ability to have 3D CAD and a 3D printer, this is a shortcut to get a nice underbelly for these freight cars. Um, it's very realistic. And once I detailed the bottom of this, I called this project complete. I do want to come back and just stress this a little bit. Um, it looks too clean for me, but I'm pretty pleased with the rest of the car and the rusting, and put a trash barrel under there. And there's that bookcase I was referring to. And there's I just scratch built this. The idea is this just unrolls and then they tie it off somehow. So, oh, hold on a second. So that's the finished car, and again, I'm gonna go back and just stress this a little bit. It's a little too neat for me, but it was an interesting project for someone who normally doesn't scratch build rolling stock. It was a but with these details, these Grandt Line windows, these ladders, this Grandt Line smoke stack, these little grab-ons. It's it's a relatively easy project for anybody to do. Is there any questions on this?
Did you weight the interior of the cabin?
No, just the trash cans were filled with tungsten, and it's a pretty heavy car actually. It has a little bit of mass to it with between the pewter benches and the tungsten weights in the two trash cans. It has a little bit of mass to it.